Hi everybody, this is Zev Steinhardt from Photography in Plain English, and today we're going to be talking about layers and layer masks in Photoshop. We're going to discuss what layers and layer masks are, we're going to discuss how they work, and we're going to be discussing why you should use them. In this case, I'm using Photoshop CC 2020, but you can follow along with any version of Photoshop. You can download the files that I'm using and follow along. The download links will be in the video description. So let's take a look at this Photoshop document that we have. The document has two layers, and you can see that by looking at the layers palette here below. If you don't see the layers palette, there's no need to worry. All you have to do is go to Windows and Layers, or hit the hotkey F7, and the layers palette will appear. So let's take a look at these two layers. We have a blue layer and we have a red layer. The best way to think of layers is to think of them as pieces of paper stacked one on top of the other. In this case, you can think of this particular Photoshop document as a blue piece of paper with a red piece of paper lying right underneath it. Because the red paper is underneath the blue paper, you can't see it. All you can see is the blue. One of the things that you can do is you can change the order of the layers. For example, you can take the red layer and move it up on top of the blue layer. You can do this by clicking on the layer you want to move and dragging it up or down in the layer stack. If we move the red layer to the top, then you'll only see the red. Another thing you can do is to make layers visible or invisible. Take a look at the eye icon next to the red layer. If we click on it, the eye icon disappears, and the red layer becomes invisible, and you can see the layer underneath. If you click it again, you can make that layer visible again. You can also change the opacity of the layers. By default, layers are solid, and you can't see through them. However, by moving the opacity slider, you can make a layer more and more transparent, allowing the layer underneath to bleed through. So let's take a look at this red layer. If you look at the opacity slider, you'll see that it's set to 100%, meaning that the layer is completely opaque. As we move the opacity slider down, more and more of the blue starts to come through. When we're down to 50%, the canvas turns purple, since it's a combination of red and blue. And I can keep moving the opacity slider all the way down until it reaches 0, at which point that's the same as making the layer invisible. If I change it back to 100% again, the red layer becomes completely solid. But what if I only want to see part of a layer? For example, suppose I want the bottom layer to show through on the left side of the canvas, but not on the right. I can't simply use the opacity slider because that affects the canvas as a whole. That's where layer masks come into play. Layer masks allow you to see through one layer to the layer below it. To add a layer mask to a layer, all you have to do is highlight the layer you want to put the mask on and press the layer mask button down at the bottom of the palette. You'll see a white box appear next to your layer thumbnail. That white box represents your layer mask. One way to think of layer masks is to think of it like a scratch-off lottery ticket. The coating on the ticket hides what the ticket says underneath, so you can't see if it's a winner or a loser. When you scratch away the coating, however, you get to see what's underneath. The same thing applies to a layer mask. A layer mask has two colors, black and white. The white on a layer mask is like the coating, and it hides the layers underneath. Painting with black is like scratching away the coating, and it reveals the layers underneath. The solid white box in the layer mask is telling you that the mask is completely covering the layer below. It's completely solid, so none of the bottom layer is coming through. You can cut through that layer mask by painting on it with black. Let's go ahead and do that. First, make sure that the layer mask is active. You can see that by the little white outline around the white box. That's telling you that that's the active mask. If the white box is around the layer thumbnail itself, then you're painting on the layer, which is not what you want to do. So make sure that it's the mask that's active. And then go ahead and grab your brush tool. To grab the brush tool, you can either hit the B key or you can grab it from the toolbar. Then make sure that black is your active foreground color. You can do this by going to your color swatches and making sure that black is the active foreground color. If your colors here are not black and white, you can easily fix that by pressing D, which returns the colors to their default black and white, and then hit X to make black the foreground color. Now that you have your brush tool and you're painting with black, you can paint on the layer mask. And as you're painting on the layer mask, you can see the layer underneath coming through. It's as if you're scratching away at that lottery ticket coating, allowing the layer underneath to become visible. Take a look at the white thumbnail on the layer mask. You'll see that part of it turned black. That represents what your mask actually looks like. To see the actual mask, simply hold down the Alt button and click on the layer mask. Click on it again and it returns you back to the canvas. You can also use masks with multiple layers. Let's take a look at how to do that. First, I'm going to go ahead and delete the mask that we just created, so that brings us back to where we started. Next, I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer by clicking on the New Layer button at the bottom of the Layers palette. And you'll see that a brand new transparent layer was created at the top of the layer stack. Let's go ahead and fill that layer with another color. Let's say green. So I'm going to set my foreground color to green, and I'm going to grab my paint bucket tool, and I'm going to fill the layer with green. Now we have 3 layers. A green layer on top, with a red layer underneath, and a blue layer at the bottom. Now let's make some of the red visible. To do this, we're going to put a layer mask on the green layer, since that's the layer we want to see through. So with the green layer highlighted, press the layer mask button at the bottom of the palette, and you'll see a new mask created. Next, we're going to paint on the mask to bring out the red underneath it. So make sure that, again, that the layer mask is active. Press the B key to grab your brush tool. Make sure that black is your foreground color. If it's not, again, press D and then X. And then you can start painting on the mask, and the red underneath it will become visible. Now, let's make some of the blue layer visible. So to do that, we're going to add a layer mask to the red layer, since that's the layer we want to see through. Click on the layer to make sure it's active, and again, press the New Layer Mask button. Again, make sure you're using your brush, and make sure that your foreground color is black, and then go ahead and paint on the mask. And you'll see the blue color start to come through. By painting on both layer masks, I'm in effect scratching through both layers to show the blue at the bottom of the layer stack. If you ever make a mistake while painting on a layer mask, don't worry, it's very easy to fix. If painting with black on a mask shows the layer underneath, then painting with white will do the opposite. It'll hide the layer underneath. So if you want to get rid of the blue, you can simply change the foreground color to white by pressing X, and then paint over the blue on the canvas. And as you do, you will see that the blue disappears. And you can do the same thing on the next layer by clicking on the layer mask on the green layer and painting with white and watching the red disappear. Now you might be thinking this is a silly example using solid colors. After all, this isn't a real picture. So let's take a look at a case where you might use this in real life, something more of a practical application. This is a picture of the Fire Island Lighthouse that I took a few years ago. As you can see, this picture is simply a single layer. Now I'm going to go ahead and add another layer to this picture. The layer I'm going to add is a special kind of layer called an adjustment layer. We'll cover adjustment layers in another video, but for now, just know that I'm going to add a layer that's going to convert this picture from a color picture to black and white. To add this layer, press the 2 half circles layer button and choose black and white. As you can see, the picture changed from color to black and white. But if you look at the layers palette, you'll see that it added a new layer called a black and white layer, along with a layer mask. This layer is the layer that turns the picture black and white. If you want to make it invisible, it works the same as the layer before. Click on the eye icon, and it becomes invisible, and you can see the color underneath. By clicking on it again, the black and white layer becomes visible. Now suppose I want the entire picture to be black and white, except for the roof of the building. So, to bring back the color to the roof of the building, all I have to do is click on the layer mask for the black and white layer, make sure that I'm painting with black, grab my brush, and begin painting on the roof. And as you can see, as I'm painting, the original color data is coming through. Now you might be wondering, why bother with layers and layer masks at all? Why not simply make adjustments to the picture as a whole? Well, there are 2 reasons. First, let's delete the black and white layer, just to bring the picture back to how it was originally. Now let's convert it to black and white by using an image adjustment. So we can go up to Image, Adjustments, and Black and White. And you'll see it changed the picture from a color image to a black and white one. But you'll notice that it affects the entire picture. I can't pick which parts of the picture I want to be affected by the change and which parts I want to leave as they were originally. In other words, using image adjustments, you can only make global changes to the image. If you want to make local adjustments, where you can pick and choose which parts of the picture you want to affect, you have to use layers and layer masks. Another reason to use layer masks is to be able to do non-destructive editing. Non-destructive editing is an editing technique where you make sure that the original picture data is preserved. The reason why this is important is because by using non-destructive editing, you can always go back and change things if you decide to change your mind. For example, let's take this picture and save it as a black and white image. And now, let's say I come back a week later and I decide, I liked it better in color instead. So let's go get our image back. When I open it, it's now a black and white image. The color data that I had before is gone. I'm out of luck. I'm left permanently with a black and white image. However, if I use a non-destructive method, such as an adjustment layer, I can always go back and either change the adjustment layer or delete it, and I'll still have my original color data to work with. By using non-destructive methods, I'm simply giving myself more options to use in case later I change my mind. And that's the basics of layers and layer masks. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned a lot about layers and layer masks and that you're confident enough to go ahead and experiment on them in your own images. What other photography or Photoshop topics would you like me to cover in future videos? Let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you.